In 2025, a quiet storm is moving across Europe, and most people do not notice it because it does not look like a crisis. There are no daily breaking alerts. There are no loud speeches on every street corner. Instead, it happens through letters in the mail, new rules in government offices, long waiting lines, and decisions that never fully get explained. For many Muslim immigrants and Muslim families, the pressure does not always come as open hate. It comes as delays, extra checks, lost permits, and a slow feeling that the space to live normally is getting smaller. Some European governments say they are protecting security, national identity, or social unity. Critics say these same policies can end up pushing Muslims out of neighborhoods, out of public life, and sometimes out of the country itself. In this video, we will explore 10 European countries where stricter migration rules. Immigration demands. Limits on Islamic institutions are creating a silent squeeze in 2025. Stay with us until the end, because the pattern only becomes clear when you see how many different systems are moving in the same direction. And as you listen, remember, this is not only about politics. It is about real families trying to live with dignity, raise children, work honestly, and practice faith and peace. Number 1, Denmark. Denmark is often seen as calm, organized, and practical, and that is exactly why the changes there can feel so powerful. A country does not need to shout to change the direction of people's lives. It only needs policies that reshape where people can live and how communities are allowed to grow. In Denmark, the debate about so-called parallel societies has been strong for years, and by 2025 it continues to affect many residents who come from immigrant backgrounds, including many Muslims. These policies focus heavily on neighborhoods with high shares of residents from what Denmark calls non-Western backgrounds. And the way the rules work can mean housing changes, social housing reductions, and relocation pressure in specific areas. Supporters say the goal is integration and preventing segregation. Critics say the effect is that minority communities, often Muslim communities, get broken apart. When a neighborhood is repeatedly labeled as a problem, investment does not always follow, trust does not grow, and families start to feel like they are being managed instead of welcomed. Even when officials say the policies are about economics and safety, many Muslim residents feel the message is personal. Your community is being treated as something that must be diluted. The pressure is not only about buildings, it becomes about belonging. When the state can push whole blocks toward demolition or sale, the community bonds that took decades to build can vanish in one decision. Number 2, Austria. Austria presents a different kind of pressure, one that many people describe as administrative control mixed with security logic. Austria has a history of strict rules around Islamic organizations, including rules connected to foreign funding and public oversight. In 2025, the atmosphere around political Islam and security remains intense, and it can land heavily on ordinary Muslims who simply want to worship and build community. When a system places strong attention on mosques, sermons, and religious associations, even normal religious life can start to feel like it is happening under a spotlight. Some Muslim leaders say this creates fear, because people worry that one misunderstood sentence, one online post, or one guest speaker could bring investigations or closures. Authorities often argue that transparency and oversight protects society. Critics argue that when these rules are applied more aggressively to Muslim groups than to others, it stops being equal oversight and starts looking like unequal suspicion. Another issue is the feeling of endless checks. If Muslim institutions must constantly prove they are safe and loyal, while other religious spaces are assumed innocent, then the playing field is not level. Over time, that kind of unequal pressure can cause communities to shrink. Not always because people are forced out in one dramatic moment, but because the stress makes it harder to operate schools, charities, and prayer spaces, and harder to raise children with a stable sense of identity. Number 3, Greece. Greece sits at a major border point, and because of that, migration policies there can affect large numbers of Muslim asylum seekers. Since many people arriving from regions facing war or crisis are Muslim, in 2025, the Greek story is often described as a story of borders, camps, and waiting. For many people, the problem is not only whether they will be accepted or rejected, it is the long period of uncertainty where life is frozen. When asylum systems move slowly or suspend processing, families can spend months or even longer in a state of limbo. Children grow up without stable schooling. Adults cannot plan for work or housing. Mental stress rises and hope fades. Greece also shows how restriction can happen through temporary structures that become long-term. What starts as emergency housing can become a fixed reality where people are controlled, monitored, and isolated. When movement is limited and services drop, the pressure increases. If you are a Muslim refugee family, it can feel like the system is built to make you tired enough to leave, even if you have nowhere safe to go. And when religious life has no stable space, when prayer rooms are treated as suspicious, and when local hostility grows, the message becomes clear. You are not meant to settle here as an equal neighbor. Number 4, the Netherlands. The Netherlands has long been known for tolerance, and that is why shifts there can shock people. In 2025, the tension many Muslims describe is not always about open bans. It is about identity debates, strong integration demands, and security policies that can hit harder on certain groups. When a country starts talking more and more about values, loyalty, and compatibility, minorities can feel like they are being asked to prove they belong in a way others are not. Some debates have focused on dual nationality, citizenship measures, the idea that the state should have more power to remove status from people seen as threats. Governments argue that these tools are for serious cases tied to terrorism. Critics argue that once you build legal tools that apply mainly to dual nationals, the fear spreads beyond the small number of extreme cases. Ordinary families start to worry about what counts as too religious, counts as wrong connections, and whether one mistake can destroy years of life built in the country. For Muslim communities, the pressure can also appear in local decisions, difficulties in mosque expansion, more scrutiny of Islamic schools, and public arguments that frame Islamic visibility as a social problem. When that kind of climate grows, some people choose to leave quietly, not because they were officially expelled, but because they no longer feel safe building a future. Number 5, Switzerland. Switzerland is often described as neutral and balanced, but its story shows how public votes and legal limits can shape religious life for decades. Switzerland already had a major debate around minarets in the past. And in 2025, a nationwide face-covering ban is now in force. Supporters present such rules as protecting social openness or security. Critics argue that the impact falls heavily on Muslim women who wear niqab or similar coverings, turning daily life into a risk of fines, public conflict, and police attention. Even if only a small number of women wear full face coverings, the symbol is large, and the social message can be painful. Your religious expression is not welcome in public space. Alongside this, communities can face difficulties around building and zoning. Because mosque projects often attract political resistance, local delays, and heavy scrutiny. When building a place of worship becomes a long fight, it affects community life. Weddings, education, youth programs, and simple social support become harder. Over time, families may decide it is easier to move elsewhere. This is how quiet removal can happen, not through mass deportation, but through a social and legal environment that makes it harder to live with dignity while keeping your faith visible. Number 6, Hungary. Hungary is known for a strong anti-migration posture, and in 2025 it remains one of the toughest places in Europe for asylum access. For Muslim migrants, especially those arriving from Muslim-majority regions, the reality can feel like a wall. When legal entry paths are extremely limited, when asylum systems are nearly closed, and when political messaging paints migrants as a threat, the result is a near-total block. Supporters say this defends national sovereignty. Critics say it denies basic protection to people fleeing danger. Even for Muslims who are already in Hungary, life can feel tense if public discourse frames Islam as foreign and unwanted. When a country defines its identity in ways that imply only one cultural or religious story belongs, minorities become invisible by design. That invisibility is not neutral. It can shape how schools treat children, how landlords treat renters, how employers make choices, and how safe it feels to practice faith openly. In such an environment, Muslims may not be removed by force, but they may be prevented from arriving, prevented from settling, and pressured to move away if they do manage to enter. Number 7. Italy. Italy's story in 2025 is shaped by migration control, security concerns, and political arguments about national cohesion. Italy also shows how a community can be pressured through local rules, police powers, and public fear. Muslim immigrants in Italy often face a complicated system where legal status can be fragile. Work permits can be difficult, and local decisions can strongly affect everyday life. One city may allow a prayer space, while another blocks it through zoning, noise, rules, or paperwork that never ends. When Islamic centers cannot easily register, expand, or operate openly, Italy also faces debates about radicalization and public safety, and when security becomes the main lens, many ordinary Muslims feel they are treated as potential suspects, first, and citizens second. That feeling pushes people into silence. Silence leads to isolation. Isolation makes integration harder, and then the cycle is used as proof that the community does not belong. Over time, some families choose to leave for countries where they believe they can build a more stable future. Number 8. France. France has one of the largest Muslim populations in Europe, so changes there matter widely. France often speaks about secularism, and in 2025 the argument continues. The state says it must keep religion out of public institutions to protect equality. Critics argue that in practice, the rules land more heavily on Muslims, especially when debates focus on headscarves, Islamic schools, and mosque administration. France has also taken strong actions in recent years against certain organizations and religious spaces, often linking them to extremism. Supporters say these measures protect society. Critics say the tools can be too broad and can punish whole communities for the actions of a few, or for cultural differences that are not crimes. When parents fear that Islamic education will be treated as suspicious, when charities fear dissolution, when mosques fear closure, the result is a community that feels permanently judged. And when children grow up hearing that their identity is a problem, they either hide who they are or feel pushed out of the national story. Quiet removal can happen through this steady social pressure. People leave the public space. They stop applying for certain jobs. They stop attending civic life. They become invisible. Invisibility becomes the new form of exclusion. Number 9. Germany. Germany is one of Europe's most important countries for immigration policy, and in 2025 it faces strong political pressure to reduce migration and tighten rules. For Muslim refugees and Muslim immigrants, the biggest stress often comes from legal uncertainty and family separation. When family reunification is limited or suspended for large groups, it does not just reduce numbers on paper, it breaks real households. A father lives alone for years. A mother raises children without support. A child grows up without seeing one parent. So even if the person in Germany has legal protection, their life remains incomplete. Germany also shows how waiting can become its own form of punishment. Long processing times, repeated reviews, and unclear outcomes can keep people in fear. Inside the country, Muslim communities may face higher scrutiny, debates about integration, and pressure to prove loyalty. Some of this comes from real security concerns, but if policies and public messaging treat Muslims as a special risk category, then normal religious life becomes harder. Over time, people may leave or decide not to come at all, because the path feels too cold, too complicated, and too uncertain. Number 10. Poland. Poland's Muslim population is smaller than in many Western European countries, and that is exactly why Poland matters in this list. Silent removal is not only about pushing out large communities, it can also be about building a system where a community never grows in the first place. In countries where public support for accepting Muslim refugees is very low and where immigration pathways are tight, the result is a near absence of Muslim settlement. When mosque projects face strong local resistance, when Islamic visibility is treated as controversial, and when cultural accommodation is rare, it becomes difficult for Muslim families to imagine a future there. A family does not need to be deported to be excluded. If the doors are mostly closed, if the social climate is unfriendly, and if the community has no support network, most people simply will not come, and those who do come may decide to leave quietly. That is how removal can happen without headlines. The country stays unchanged because it is designed to stay that way. Now step back and look at the pattern. These countries are not identical. They have different histories, different laws, and different politics. But when you compare them, you start to see shared tools. Stronger border control, tighter asylum access, limits on family reunification, heavy scrutiny of Islamic institutions, public debates that treat Islamic visibility as a threat, and social climates where Muslims feel they must constantly prove they are safe, loyal, and acceptable. Some of these policies are defended as security measures. Some are defended as integration strategies. Some are defended as protecting secular public life. But when the same pressure falls again and again on the same minority, people begin to ask a hard question. Is this really about safety, or is it about making Muslim life so difficult that families leave, arrivals stop, and communities shrink? If you want a Europe that is strong, safe, and fair, then the answer cannot be silent pressure that targets one community. The answer has to be clear. Laws applied equally, honest public debate, and a commitment to human dignity for everyone. If this topic matters to you, please like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you think is happening in your country and what kind of future you want to see for Europe.